Chapter 19. They went back down to the inn's downstairs tavern, which was closed and empty for the night, until they could get ready to depart. As Bach continued tending to the injured, Isabella ducked into the kitchen and changed into her riding clothes. Tovano gathered their horses, while Kotarian went out to buy a cart with which to transport Avantil, who was too hurt to ride. Spotting a delivery cart making its rounds to the shops and eateries on the street, Kotarian spoke a few words to the driver, then returned a few moments later with the cart, minus the donkey. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty, but that fruit peddler charged us 2 gold for this rickety donkey cart." Kotarian gestured to the humble carriage outside the inn. "By sacrillion stupefying silence! I should have known better than to do business with a laborer." Or maybe you demanded when you could have asked politely. Bach surprised himself with the tinge of anger in his voice. Kotarian gaped at the blacksmith's boy's sudden show of feistiness. Bach walked away before the sorcerer could reply. "Come on. We need to get Avantil into this cart and then back to bed. He needs to rest, and so does Coregan." "I'm fine. I'll help." Coregan sweated heavily and staggered as he rose from his chair. The commander is far from fine. He has lost so much blood. "No, sit down." To Bach's surprise, Corrigan didn't argue this time and returned to his seat. Bach and Tovano then helped Avantil into the straw-filled cart. "I will ride with Avantil," Isabella declared. Wingate strapped the cart's simple harness to his powerful warhorse. He tied the reins of Isabella's horse to his saddle, while Bach did the same for Avantil's stallion. With Isabella in the cart, Corrigan insisted on mounting his horse and riding alongside her. Wingate rode ahead of the cart, with Kotarian and Tovano in the back, taking care to avoid being too close to one another. "Becky and I will ride beside the cart too, in case Avantil needs further aid." Corrigan grunted a muffled reply. "And I also want to keep my eye on you, Commander. You are hurting far worse than you let on. Not that you would admit it." Thankfully, the streets of Nassim largely were empty, so the party, some of whom still wore bloody clothes, didn't attract much attention. Wingate examined every dark side street and alleyway for trouble. "We shouldn't stay at any inn. Those behind this attack will be looking for us there." Tovano scratched his chin. "Think so, eh?" "Whoever sent this death squad knows who we are. They probably know where we are headed and why," Wingate replied. "Anyone who went to this expense and trouble won't give up just yet." "What should we do, young fella?" Wingate kept his eyes on the road as he spoke. "When we are able, we continue to Oso Creek. Clearly, there's something there that our mysterious attacker doesn't want us to find. Find that secret, and we will find who hired these cutthroats." Bach turned his head to Isabella, who continued cradling Avantil. "She truly loves him, and my friend needs my healer skills. That must be my focus." "But what about tonight? Avantil isn't in any condition for an overnight ride, and neither is the commander." On one hand, Bach badly wanted to continue the journey and stop the blight before any more innocents were harmed, particularly now that they suspected the malevolent force behind the blight was actively trying to stop them. But Avantil and Coregan were his patients now, and as a healer, he had an obligation to put their care above his own fears for his family's safety. If Mother and Father were here, they would tell me the same. Hands on his head, Avantil gingerly sat up in the back of the donkey cart. "Ah, I may be of some help, assuming I can clear the cotton from my brain." Isabella supported him with her arms. "Lie still, my love. Don't—" "No, I have an idea. One of my family's trading partners, Gruntunner and Associates, is based here in Nassim. Lord and Lady Gurnatel happened to be on that voyage with my parents. Their home is in the heart of the city, and I'm fairly certain it will be empty. We can stay there for a few days, I think." Isabella's dark eyes widened. "You mean trespass in their family home? As if we were criminals?" "Long-lost friends," Avantil grinned. "They won't mind, particularly when they see the bag of gold we leave for their troubles." "Ow! Watch the cobblestones, Wingate." In less than an hour, the exhausted, bedraggled group arrived at the Gruniterol home. Bach whistled upon approaching the gate. The three-story home featured large stone columns in the front and a back garden secluded by thick rows of hedges. A wrought iron fence encircled the property, but otherwise there were no signs of any security, and no light came from the home. "I'll open the gate. It appears to be a simple latch." "Whoa!" When Bach touched the metal latch, an invisible force threw him backward. He would have fallen had Wingate not caught him as he stumbled. "An eldritch alarm." Tovano scratched his gray temple. "Figures they wouldn't leave such a nice home unguarded." "Is there anything we can do?" When Bach looked closely, he saw the faint blue-green outline of the magic dome around the perimeter of the property. Tovano nodded. "Certainly. This is a low-level alarm spell. Hardly the type used to safeguard Cenarian Square or the Royal Palace." Kotarian cracked his knuckles. "Botharian sputtering barrage should shatter that low-quality shield instantly." "As well as every window and half of the eardrums on the block," Tovano replied. "No, this takes nuance. Allow me." The old sorcerer placed his hands at the sides of his head and closed his eyes. He quietly spoke a few words, and slowly a small hole in the dome began to open, just big enough for a person to walk through. Bach tried the latch again. This time it opened. The group made their way into the courtyard, and Tovano ceased concentrating. The hole in the dome immediately sealed behind them. Hands on knees, Tovano took a moment to catch his breath. Bach handed the man some water, and he eagerly accepted it. "That's a disruption spell, Bach. It can temporarily negate another sorcerer's magic, but only for a brief time, and only while the second spellcaster maintains his or her concentration. It is a great deal more difficult from outside the perimeter of the spell than it would be inside of it." Getting in the house was considerably easier. The lock on the back door was mechanical, not magical. After Tovano recovered, he jimmied it with a basic turnkey spell. Bach exhaled when they stepped into the quiet, empty, and hopefully safe house. With his assistance, Avantil climbed the steps and into one of the 5 upstairs beds, with Tovano claiming another one. Bach applied a healing poultice to his friend's scalp and gave him another dose of the Yorka root, hoping to grant his patient a long, uninterrupted night's sleep. He returned to the kitchen. The rest of the group moved their bags and supplies into the house. Coregan insisted on carrying in his own bag. "I'm fine," he said weakly, but after taking just 2 steps into the house, he stumbled and collapsed unconscious. "Commander!" Wingate rushed to his mentor's side and found him muttering in a barely audible whisper. Bach knelt to examine Coregan. "His wounds have reopened. I need to get these cuts closed or he'll bleed to death." Wingate lifted Coregan like he was a child and placed him on a bed in a lower-floor bedroom. Bach pulled some items out of his healer's bag and pointed to the pantry. "See if they have any dried sage." It wasn't exactly the herb he needed, but Weni Khan told him sage would work for a healing spell in a pinch. Isabella jumped up and searched the cabinets. "Kotarian, find me some clean rags." "Please." To his relief, Kotarian did as asked without complaint. Bach then ripped open Coregan's shirt, cleaned the gory gashes on his shoulder, and stitched the wounds closed. When Isabella returned with the sage, Bach tossed a pinch into the air, took each of Corrigan's hands, and began his folk magic incantation. He closed his eyes and focused all his thoughts, all his energy on repairing Corrigan's injuries. Heal this man, flesh become whole, wounds knit, and strength return. He held the spell for a full 5 minutes until he could hold it no longer. With a gasp, he opened his eyes. Such a spell was one of the most powerful in a healer's repertoire, but one of the trickiest. One small mistake and the spell could fail. He dropped the commander's hands and pulled back the man's shirt. The wound remained raw, but the bleeding had stopped. Bach then smeared the cuts with a salve to keep the wounds clean. I finally did something right. How is he? Isabella asked, Wingate looking over her shoulder. Bach wiped perspiration from his brow. He's better, but still not well. If I had treated him an hour ago, I'd feel much better, but you did the best that could be done under the circumstances, Bach. Isabella squeezed his arm again. Wingate, please keep watch over the commander and let me know if there is any change in his condition. But, Your Majesty, I must be at your side to protect you. What if we are attacked again? Isabella raised a single finger. Currently, the commander needs you more. You have pushed yourself this whole trip, always putting our concerns ahead of your own. Consider yourself relieved of your duty until tomorrow morning. Wingate opened his mouth, but Isabella would hear none of it. That is my decision, and, as your princess, I command you to carry it out. They stepped back into the kitchen to find Kotarian rummaging through the Gruneteral's cabinets. With a satisfied "Aha!" he pulled out a bottle of red wine. This day has been a complete disaster. I only can hope tomorrow brings better fortune, or a quick death. He walked up the stairs, bottle in hand, without a word to the others. When Kotarian was out of sight, Isabella's shoulders slumped as she sat at the table. He is correct, you know. About what, Your Majesty? Bach put a kettle of water on the wood-burning stove. This day, this mission, has been a complete disaster, as Kotarian said. Avantil and Coregan were almost killed. We are fleeing for our lives. From what, exactly? They know us, but we know nothing of them. She closed her tired eyes and put her hand to her aching forehead. True, they have us on the run. Bach took a seat beside Isabella. But that isn't your fault. We all were taken by surprise at the inn. Isabella leaned toward him and shook her hands vigorously, tears now welling in her eyes. It is entirely my fault. It was my idea to come here, and I asked each of you to follow. Ultimately, your safety and the success of this mission falls on my shoulders. I should have been prepared for every possible outcome. Now wait. Bach held up his hands. Prepared for every possible outcome? That is impossible. You can't hold yourself to that standard, Your Majesty. But I am the crown princess. If I fall short in my duties, the whole kingdom suffers. Perhaps Kotarian is right, and I am not up to the challenge. Well, we must be close enough to the truth that our enemies are nervous. So you are doing something right. Bach offered her a soft smile. I don't know anything about being royalty, but I know you have prepared for this your whole life. You are up to this challenge, Your Majesty, and that is the truth. She sniffed, then chuckled. You only say that because you must. He returned to the kitchen, lifted the hot kettle from the stove, and poured it into the coffee press. Remember, Your Majesty, I am just a serving-class boy from Sola Valley. I could flatter you for a month solid, and I still couldn't hold an estate or serve on the royal council. Setting a mug in front of her, Bach sat back down. So, believe me when I say we need your leadership, Isabella. Even Kotarian. He is a powerful weapon, but he still requires your guidance. I know strong women. Trust me when I say you are one. Isabella stared into her mug, but tears no longer pooled in her eyes. Me, of all people, providing counsel to our princess? I would have thought this was one of Yata's pranks, except it didn't end with me getting punched in the arm. Bach couldn't help but grin thinking about what his sister's reaction to this conversation would be. You're laughing at me. Isabella looked up, trying not to succumb to laughter herself. I must admit, that is not a reaction I normally receive. Oh, no, it's not that, Isabella. I was just thinking about my sister. Again, that is hardly the response I expected. Now they both chortled. No, it's... You have to know Yata. Bach forced himself to say in between laughs. If she were here, she would scold me for not thrashing that assassin more quickly. And then she would lift her hammer and stand beside us in this fight. It sounds like you are fortunate to have Yata for a sister, as I am fortunate to have you as a friend. Isabella wiped the remaining tears from her face. Thank you, Bach. And do not think I missed that you called me by my name. I hope to hear it again.